basically you can secure much more funding using these engineering doctorates where you can try to align the interest of academics and industrial people together, make them sit in a room and tackle those problems head on.
Hi guys, welcome back to the podcast. So for this podcast, we are going to discuss about how to get a PhD in the UK. And for this, I have invited my friend Kamran. He's currently doing his PhD from Swansea University. So he's the right person to talk to if you want to discuss about all the intricacies about getting into a PhD in the UK. So let's begin with the video. Hi Kamran, welcome to the podcast and thanks for giving us your time, man.
Thank you, mate. It's I really appreciate it. Of course, you've been asking me to do this podcast for a while, and we have not been able to get to a mutual time. So I'm just glad I'm here now.
All right. So I will straight away ask you my first question for which people have come here. How can someone find a PhD in the UK?
Um, okay. So the main way to go about it is to make sure that your research interests align. You need to make sure first that you really want to go for a PhD, and once you have decided that, the main way to go about it is to start looking for universities, especially if you're doing it in UK. Start looking for universities in UK, and once you have to find out the universities that offer the program that align with your research interest, um, you can go onto their website, start looking for PhDs that are offering during that academic year,
Yeah.
or another way to go about it is to go to websites like findaphd.com, which I did in my case. I got my PhD through findaphd.com, but there are other websites as well. I think prospects.ac.uk, that's a good one. But
Jobs.ac.uk.
yeah, exactly. Another way would be to contact. So if you have something very specific when it comes to your research interest, so if you're looking for something very specific, you can always contact one of the supervisors um, who have the same research alignment as yours. But yes, you need to make sure that you do it much more earlier.
In
So
advance, yeah.
yeah.
It takes some time to, contact your supervisor, get him.
Yeah, exactly. You got to understand that these supervisors, they're overwhelmed, they're overworked, and sometimes, if you even send them an email, they won't reply to you most like 88%, 90% of the time. But for
Yeah,
some reason, if they're actually offering PhDs or they have secure grants which are related to their research interest, they might reach out to you or maybe send you a link or something where you can apply. But other than that, you can always find PhDs at findaphd.com. It's always available in there.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Another way could be that you might apply for a scholarship and you can contact the supervisor that you want to work in this particular field and then apply for
Yeah,
scholarship
yeah,
with that
exactly.
supervisor.
So you can actually apply for a scholarship using. So if you're because I have an engineering background, so you can always go to. So there's this thing called UKRI, which is UK Research and Innovations, and you can go to the website and start looking for the kind of research projects they are actually funding. And if you're
Yeah,
writing a good research proposal, I would recommend getting in touch with your academic referees, writing a good research proposal, and sending them towards them. That way, you can actually secure a grant for your PhD before you apply for a
yeah,
PhD, which is a
yeah,
very big advantage.
yeah. That's right. That's right. And what are the requirements in terms of like exams or like documents that you need to have before you apply for PhD?
Of course, you need to have some sort of academic qualification. So you can have a bachelor's with honors degree, with honors, or you can even have a master's in that relevant field.
Mm,
Other than that, you would for your PhD, you might need research proposals. So most of the time, if you're applying to a PhD which has already been advertised, you don't have to need to write much about the research proposal. Then in that case, you might have to write a letter of intent, and
yeah,
a letter of intent is nothing but you telling about your research background and how you can actually help the research project you're applying for.
yeah.
Other than that, you have
Yeah.
to get your English proficiency skills. You need to show them that you are proficient in English. You do that either with IELTS or TOEFL. Um, what else? Yeah. What else did I need? I
If you
need
have like good marks in English, like, during your school times, then maybe like you can present those results as well.
Yes, but you can show them. But for some reason, if you have an IELTS or a TOEFL certificate, which simplifies the process for the universities because they don't know how to grade your high school or your school grading system. So if you've got something which is much more uniform, like IELTS or TOEFL, of course that would help your advantage. But yes, you can use your high school and your secondary school English
Yeah, yeah. But
proficiency as
I
well.
but what I have heard is like it's better to give IELTS compared to TOEFL because I think it's more expect like they accept it more. Like it's acceptable in the UK compared like so TOEFL usually works in the US and IELTS works in the
Yes,
UK.
yes.
So
Another thing is when you're applying for your master's, say, you also need an IELTS certificate for that. But most
yeah,
of the universities would accept a score as low as 6.5 or 6
yeah,
even. But for your PhDs, you might require a score which is at least 7, because they
mhm,
need to make sure that not only you're proficient in your research
yeah,
skills, you're proficient in your communication skills as well, because that is very important part of your PhD, where you have to communicate with a lot with industrial people, your academic people, and you have to,
yeah,
of course, write your thesis as well. So yes, a better score in IELTS is required for your PhD. Other than that, I think other documents that you might need are references. I think you need references from your
yeah,
academic referees. So basically, you approach the people who have worked with you and know about your work, and that way they can help you out. All they need is just let them know, oh, I've worked with them,
yeah,
and they let you know how good you are or how bad you are. I hope they say that how
yeah,
good you are. But yes, but other than that, you can also get references from your industrial friends. That also helps. So if you have something which is pertaining to your industrial background as well. So if you've been, say, working in steel,
yeah,
and your research project is related to steel, you can always go back to your industrial supervisor or someone who can
yeah,
actually write your references and is familiar with your work. And they could write you a glorified version of yourself. So
yeah.
yeah, that would help.
Yeah, that's what usually happens, right? You tell your supervisor or like the referee that I want this kind of feedback.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You just tell them, just be nice to me. I'll buy you a chocolate or something. I don't know. But yeah, you
Okay.
just expect them to be nice. Make sure you know, make sure the person you approach is in your good books.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's important
yeah.
as well.
That really helps. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So my next question to you is like, what do you think is the right time for a person to look for a PhD in the UK? Is there any specific time when you should like apply, or like is there any particular time of the year where most of the PhDs will be out, or like most of the intake will be happening?
Um. So generally, there's in UK at least, there's this January intake and September intake.
Yeah,
Uh, Usually you get more research offers during the September intake because that's the end of the academic year, and of course at the end of the academic year they recycle the projects and bring
yeah,
about new funding and everything.
mhm,
But yeah, you can always go for PhDs in January as well. Well, in my case, I did apply for a September intake, but because
yeah,
of COVID and other things like, so there's this thing called ATAS certification, which you might
mhm,
need if you're applying for a PhD in UK. And it
yeah,
got delayed by certain 6 months, which means instead of September intake, I went for a January intake, which is fine. We
yeah,
all got delayed because of COVID.
yeah,
But I would say if you're doing an undergraduate, like a bachelor's degree or something, I would recommend to to gain some sort of research experience first before you apply for a PhD. Of
mhm,
course, you can apply for a PhD. Most of the people have this notion where they think they need at least a master's to secure a PhD. And make no mistake, like yes, masters, the people who have got masters, they've got some sort of advantage when they apply for a PhD because they have some sort of research prior experience, then and they've worked in close proximity to
yeah,
those references and everyone. But Yes, but you can apply for a PhD using bachelor's degree as well, but you need to make sure you need to know what you're signing up for, because
Yeah,
it's a very,
yeah,
yeah, it's a very different than an industrial setup.
yeah.
And you got to realize, so when I did finish with my master's, I was guided throughout the entire process. But when I'm doing my PhD now, and I'm pretty much independent. I'm doing my own work. I usually um, consult with my supervisor once every fortnight.
Mm,
But there's a process to that. So I went into it gradually. I did my master, so I know what's expected of me when I'm doing my PhD.
yeah,
But it could be a very big shock for an undergraduate. So I would rather have him go through some sort of research experience, get in touch with your seniors, your masters,
mm,
or your academic supervisors. Maybe help them write a research paper, work with them in close proximity, and once you get general idea, you can apply for that. Also, I would suggest, so before, if I think 6 months prior to the end of your graduate or undergraduate programs,
yeah,
uh, I would recommend that's the right amount of time before you should start applying for PhDs, because you know, once you start doing that, you start realizing a pattern between those PhDs and what they're actually looking for in a candidate. In that
yeah.
way, you can actually align your master's or your bachelor's thesis
Mm,
to some way conform to those ideas that they're looking for in your PhD. So yeah, I would recommend 6 months. A year would be like really good if you really thought about this. If you really want to go for your PhD, just start aligning your work towards that PhD, or start thinking in a manner which a PhD candidate would be expected to. Other
mm,
than that, I would also recommend to start looking for scholarship or research grants,
yeah,
because most of the people, they start looking for PhD, which is right most of the time, but you can also secure a scholarship before you get a PhD.
yeah,
So, and you got to understand that these scholarships are highly competitive and
yeah,
they have got a deadline.
yeah,
So you need to make sure that you secure your grants and research grants if you're going
A-
for
and also like when
securing of
you
a scholarship. Yeah,
also like when you want to apply for a scholarship, you need to have a very good profile. So make sure that
yeah,
you are working on some good research projects, or maybe you have you have some publications before you start applying for it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That, yeah,
And
that helps.
you talked about like PhD after bachelor's. I want you to elaborate more on it, because I have seen this kind of a fashion now, people moving directly to PhD from bachelor's. And what kind of a profile do you need for that? And also, like how difficult it is. I think you already talked about it, but can you elaborate more on it? And third thing will be like, does this make a difference on the time span that you spend for your PhD, or like the PhD remains the same? Because in the US and in India as well, the time that you take to finish a PhD will increase if you're going from bachelor's to PhD, then master's to PhD. So can you share your thoughts on this?
Well, that depends on a various factors. So when you're trying to secure a PhD right after you finish with your bachelor's, most of the people that are actually applying for their PhD, they got this general idea. Oh, I should know more about this project. But the thing is, the people who are actually interviewing you, they know for a fact that of course you don't know much about this project. They're not
Yeah,
stupid. They've been working in this academic setup for years now, and they don't
yeah,
expect you to be solving their problems during the interview itself. They're
yeah,
not really looking for that. All they want from you is this general idea of what we're talking about.
yeah,
And basically, when they're interviewing you, they're not interviewing you about your problem solving skills. They're
yeah,
basically trying to find out whether you know what you're talking about.
yeah,
So if you it's so for in my example, say when I was applying for my PhD, my work was related to stir casting of aluminum, and this work was related to liquid metal, which
yeah,
involved carbon in them as well. So when they started probing, they started asking me questions more related to pertaining to my master's thesis, and
mm,
that's when I realized that it's much more important to know your basics
yeah,
before trying to research what the topic is all about. You can't solve that problem. Of course, if you could do that, from a
Yeah.
Google search and everything. It won't be a PhD thesis. Uh, but yeah, other than that, I would recommend. Um, yes, you would need more time to establish yourself if you're moving from a bachelor's degree to a PhD instead of a master's to a PhD,
Yeah.
because you need to understand that communication and connections, establishing connections with people is very important, especially in a PhD. It's
Yeah.
not just important for completing your PhD, it's also important for what happens after if you're finished with the PhD as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and plus, you got to start writing. You got to start expressing your ideas and thoughts and be a little more confident. You got to understand, like most of the time when we are actually coming up with a thought, we don't think it's a good idea. It's only when we start working through the cracks we realize, oh, this is something we could actually make sense out of.
Yeah.
So yeah, so bachelors need to understand, oh, this is not rocket science. It's a slow process. It's a hard working process. You need to work hard through this. And
Yeah.
most of the master students have already realized that, and they know how to work around those cracks. But the bachelor students would have to accommodate that and bring it into their mind frame. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Now I want to move on to the next question, which is about the course structure that you have in the UK for your for the PhD. So,
Yeah.
how's it like? Do you have to do the coursework, or is it like you completely like focus on the research, or like you do the both, or like you mix both the things? How does it work?
Well, it's actually quite different from the way it was. It was so when I was doing my masters in India, the way PhD candidates behaved and acted is very different from the way I've seen my peers working around. So you got to understand when you're in UK, there's a certain level of independence
Mm-hmm.
which comes with its pros and cons, because
Mm-hmm.
the pro is you can actually come up with your own ideas and start working on them, and the con is uh, it's not a guided endeavor most of the
Mm-hmm.
times. Most of the time when you're doing your work in India, you're under this constant lens of speculation
Yeah.
by your
Yeah.
supervisor.
No,
And
but I think I will say here, like PhD is always independent. Like you're always independent. Of course, like there might be a difference in terms of like the in terms of like thoughts, what how people are guiding you. For example, maybe in the UK you are getting like more free time, and your supervisor is not poking you all the time. But it might not be the case in other countries, right? So that way,
yeah,
but I think PhD is always independent that way.
yeah, true. But you got to understand the way you work around with your supervisors is actually different.
Mhm.
But I would recommend with your course structure, it's pretty much similar when it comes to the first year, where you spend your first year attending, getting familiar with the literature, the previous work that has been done in that specific field, and you start attending seminars and workshops, and you get certain level of certification if you need that for your PhD.
Mhm.
Say, I started working with ANSYS, so I've been trying to get a secure certification with ANSYS Fluent and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Also, you might need to go through some modules which could be decided by you or your supervisor or mutually.
Mhm.
So most of the time, the supervisors already pre-select some modules for you, which you
Yeah.
need to complete within the first year or so.
Yeah.
And once you've done that, and you can also, there's this independence of choosing your own modules where you realize that, oh, maybe I should maybe uh, put in electrochemistry with
Mhm.
my structure, my PhD structure. So yeah, you can attend a module for electrochemistry,
Yeah.
provided your supervisor agrees to it as well.
Yeah, like depending
Uh,
on what will you need for your project, right? So
yes, exactly.
you can customize your
Yeah,
coursework like that. Okay.
yeah, and this usually happens during the first year, where you do your seminars, your workshops, and your modules. You write your literature review,
Yeah.
and you basically it establishes a platform which you can work upon, start
Mm-hmm.
to work independently and much more confidently during your
Yeah.
second year, which is happening to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, once you're done with your work, of course you start writing a thesis at the end of your PhD, which is common news. But yeah, that's basically the
And
course structure.
because I remember from my time, like it was possible to convert your master's credit to your the PhD credit, so that you can fulfill the criteria of getting the credits. And also there are certain other factors. For example, uh, you can use all your research skills. Like for example, if you have learned some skill somewhere, you can use those skills and convert them into credits, depending on how much time you spend on learning that skill. For example, and even if you presented your poster, then you can say, okay, I spent this much time preparing my poster and this much time presenting my poster. So this is equivalent to these many credits. So maybe I don't know if it is all over the UK, or is it like specific to particular university. Is it the same in Swansea?
No, so far we have called MTR meetings, which is midterm review meetings.
Mm,
So you got to understand, PhD is affiliated to this research program called Sustain, which is related to sustainable steel industry,
yes.
basically decarbonization of steel industry by 2030.
Mm,
And four universities are affiliated to it: Sheffield, Cardiff, Swansea, and Warwick.
mm,
And there's a bunch of other industries in there as well who are sponsoring these projects. So Tata Steel, Liberty Steel, British Steel, and a
mm,
bunch of other big steel producers.
mm,
Um, so our criteria is to do these MTR meetings where we all come together in a specific. So this time it happened in Swansea, which was like a month ago or so, and we
mm,
do either do a poster or we do a presentation to let them know, oh, this is the kind of progress we have made,
mm,
and then you're supposed to log in that progress into our progression uh, meetings log,
mm. Okay.
and that's about it.
All right. And how long is the PhD there? Like, what's
Well,
the time?
generally, they most of the PhD programs are offered for 3 years. Of course, they can apply for an extension, but most of them are sponsored for 3 years.
Mhm,
Mine is sponsored for 4 years. It's probably because I'm part of this sustain program, and probably they realized I need much more time to do this project.
mhm.
But yes, most of those PhD in UK usually tend to stick to the 3 year course structure. Yeah.
All right. That's great. And now I would want to switch to some other kind of question. For example, like, why should people come to the UK to pursue PhD? What do you think? What do you think are the benefits of coming to the UK?
Okay. You got to understand that UK has been known globally for high quality education,
Mm,
and it comes with a certain international repute. Of course, it's home to one of the best universities in the world, Oxford, Cambridge, and stuff like that. But you got to understand all these other universities, they're affiliated to these Cambridge and Oxford to a certain extent as well.
mm,
Another good thing that I realized is most of the projects that are being done here in the PhD programs are either affiliated to other universities or industries in some way or manner.
mm,
um, of course, there's this other option of called which is called an engineering doctorate, (HD), which
mm,
is which is slightly different from a PhD because PhD is much more academically aligned.
mm,
But in an engineering doctorate is tackling a problem which is very prevalent to the industry,
mm,
which was something I was not familiar with. That is something I saw first time in UK, which is actually a very good idea. I don't know why we don't practice that in India.
mm,
But yeah, basically you can secure much more funding using these engineering doctorates where you can try to align the interest of academics and industrial people together, make them sit in a room and tackle those problems head on.
yeah.
Um, Another thing is there's a lot of research opportunities in UK.
Mm,
You got to understand the kind of and you got to understand UK is a developed country, and we have problems related to the global problems, which are, and UK is a leader in that, especially when it comes to, say, global warming,
yeah.
climate
Net
control.
zero. Yeah.
And yeah, net zero is a very big factor these days, and these governments are offering research opportunities everywhere to bring down the carbon emission to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So they've been offering a lot of PhD opportunities. So, and the good thing is, um, once you have done with your PhD, UK also offers you a 3 year stay work visa where you can just stay here and broaden your horizons. And you can go for your postdoc, or you can work in a field. You can do R&D. You can work in an academic setup. So you get
Mhm.
pretty much a good amount of time if you go for your PhD, because that would help you establish yourself in UK as well.
Yeah.
Another thing is, which is a good thing, there's a very good flexibility in the course structure. In PhD, especially in UK, you're much more independent, and you can work around with your ideas and your the way you approach your PhD, how you intend to close it down, how do you intend to finish it off. And the best part is, especially for us Indians, because we most of us Indians who are actually moving abroad are much more proficient in English, because we've been taught English ever since we were kids. And
Yeah.
most of the time people get surprised by the fact that I'm not a native of uh, of
Yeah.
UK. Yeah,
Yeah.
they would be like, "Oh, you're so good at English," and I would be like, that I think most of the Indians are." They don't realize for the fact that, yeah, most of the Indian people, they tend to speak in English much more than regional
Yeah.
languages.
I
Yeah,
think language is one of the problems that
yeah, yeah. So
usually
yeah,
people
so
face in the rest of the
studying
Europe.
in yeah, yeah, exactly. So studying in UK means you don't have to learn another foreign language. You've been very familiar with English ever since you've been brought up. You have been so even if you've not so fluent in English, you would start picking up on it quite easily. Other than if you go for a German course or a French course, you would have much more trouble.
Yeah.
But yes, coming to UK solves that problem entirely. And
Mm.
you got to understand that UK sensibilities are very common to Indian sensibilities. The way we think and talk are very similar,
Mm.
and that helps a lot.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So my next question to you is, what are the things that people should look into before they apply for a PhD in the UK?
Okay. I would say, uh, make sure that the PhD program that they're applying for fits their interest and goals in the long run.
Mm.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
After that, you can start looking for all those permutation and combinations, which is how reputed that PhD program is, or how
Yeah.
reputed that university is, which is
Yeah.
being affiliated to your PhD. Also,
Yeah.
you can look. Another factor would be the scholarship that you're offered.
Yeah.
Make sure your scholarship is competitive, and so you got to understand UK is offering a lot of scholarship these days, and you got to make sure that you're not being haggled into something where you find economic trouble, especially after what's happening in UK. The inflation rate and everything, it's very much harder
Yeah.
to live
Yeah. Yeah.
in UK these days than it
Yeah.
was, say, 4 or 5 years ago, especially after
Yeah.
Brexit.
Yeah.
And so make sure your funding is competitive. And another factor would be to uh, learn more about the faculty and the research support you would get for your PhD, because
Mm.
at the end of the day, those are the people that would help you cross the line when it comes to PhD. That will help you become a doctor. So
Yeah.
make sure you find the people that are working there are up to the mark, and
Yeah.
you can do that by using mutual friends. So in your case, I remember I seeked your guidance when I applied for one of those places, and one
Yeah.
of the professors was from your university, I believe, and
He
you helped me
he
out a
was my
lot, which
supervisor as well.
yeah, 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 exactly. So yeah, that helps. So if even
Yeah.
if you can't find a mutual connection, you can always look them up. You can always look them up on LinkedIn, found how active they are when it comes to research. You can go to their research profiles on Google Scholar, try to find out what they've been working on, and then you get a general idea whether the PhD interests align with their interest. And
Yeah.
another factor I think would be the program structure. I think you got to which usually happens very late in the process. So basically, after you secure the PhD, you can ask your supervisor, "Oh, how is it going to work around? How is the structure? So what are they expecting of me? What should I be doing by the end of this time period, and this time period?" And that really helps. But that's too late
Yeah.
into the process. You've already secured your PhD by then. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's about it.
All right. All right. And how's your personal and professional experience at the moment in the UK?
My personal experience has been very nice. I come from the city of Delhi, and Delhiites have a different mindset. Where Delhi is a very big city, and of course, it comes with a big city mindset. Everyone is working hard. Everyone is on the run,
Mm.
and you got to understand. And I had a similar experience with I find so much similarity between London and Delhi,
Mm,
because these are big cities. Like people are all like coming together, struggling, and trying to find economic means to sustain it.
mm,
But when you come to like a quieter place like Swansea, which is a coastal area, which is actually quite beautiful, if I would actually recommend you come here. I don't know why
mm.
you ever never visited Swansea. It's actually quite beautiful.
Yeah.
So Wales is actually quite beautiful. But yeah, you generally realize that people in Swansea are much more nicer.
Mm,
I remember the first time I came in UK.
mm,
So I was pretty excited. So I booked an Airbnb. So as soon as I came in, I dropped in my bags and I started roaming about just to learn about the whereabouts of the place.
mm,
And I realized that everywhere I went, they would smile at me, and I had to smile back, of course, because I'm not stupid. I would smile back, and they would ask me, "Are you all right?"
uh,
Which would confuse me so much because everyone
that's the
would kept
typical
yeah,
cliche, man. You
yeah,
have made
exactly, which
yeah.
would confuse me a lot, because I thought maybe there was something wrong with my face. Why do they keep asking me if I'm all right? I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. But it generally means whether they're asking, how can I help you? It's as
Mm,
basic as that. uh, so that's the personal experience. I've got a bunch of flatmates, really good people, and they're really hardworking people. And yeah, all those little qualms I had, or maybe preconceived notions I had about studying in a foreign country, especially as Indians, they have all been squashed. I know I've been very limited to Swansea and Wales so far. Maybe I've been to bit and pieces of Cardiff and Sheffield, but yeah, generally UK has been nice to me. When it comes to professional experience, yes, they're very courteous. And they respect your time. They don't expect you to work too much. They expect
yeah.
you to work
Take
in the limited
holidays.
amount of time. Yes, exactly. They expect you to take care of yourself, of your family, and your economic means as well.
Yeah.
Um, Other than that, they're always very helpful. And the good thing is they don't discredit your idea straight away. So if you come up with a stupid idea, they won't laugh at your face, which is a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
They would be like, oh, okay, let's just give it a bit of a more literature based
Okay.
credentials, and you would be like, oh, okay, and then soon you'll realize, oh, that's
You were
not a good
wrong. Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But the way they would put you down is very mellow, which I appreciate. But other than that,
That's
but
how
that's
it
the
should
thing.
be.
That's the parcel that comes along with a PhD. You come up with a bunch of 100 ideas, and 98 of them would be bad ideas, and two would be really good ideas, and that's all
Mm.
you need.
That happens because you're reading a lot of stuff during your PhD and you think, oh man, this can be done. This could be done. Let me
Exactly.
the supervisor, and your
Exactly.
supervisor will be
Yeah,
like,
that help.
man,
Yeah,
this does
exactly.
not
That's what I
happen
was
like that.
talking about. Yeah, I know.
Okay. So my last question to you is, what are the job prospects after PhD there in the UK?
So when it comes to job prospects, I would think, because I'm still doing my PhD, I would give you a very general answer, because uh, I still looked it up, because everyone does that. When you're trying to secure a PhD, you try to look up your job prospects after your PhD, and
Mm-hmm.
basically boils down to two very specific fields. It's either academics or R&D. So when it comes to academics, you could apply as a professor, or maybe you could apply as a researcher, or maybe you can even apply for as an administrative post, because most of the posts that are available in the universities, and most of them are secured by PhD, which is happening to most of the engineering doctorate students here. They're able to secure these positions because of their affiliations to the university, which really helps them in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, when it comes to academics, I think a postdoctorate, I think, which you went for, that's a good idea as well, and that helps to secure you a tier 2 visa in UK as well. And once you have done that, and you have done it with your postdoc, you can actually apply for a global talent visa, which secures your residence in UK, because you
But
can
it's
apply.
but the global talent visa, I don't know like if it's available for everyone, because what happens is like it depends on your university as well whether they are able to sponsor it
Yes,
and as well, and also depends on whether the grants and a lot of the stuff. And when
yes.
it comes to the like prospect, like when it comes to postdoc, I think if you want to go to academia, like I think going to postdoc becomes kind of like compulsory, right? And I mean, maybe you can also go to industry first and then move to academics. And but
Yeah,
usually, what happens is like people take postdoc route and then go to academic.
yeah. So if you're going for an industry, you're basically more aligned towards R&D. You could be doing R&D for a government agency, or you could be doing it for a private agency, or
Yeah,
you could be applying, going for jobs straight away. But you got to understand, you have a PhD is a very highly skilled candidate,
mhm,
and and they demand respect. So usually the people, when they're looking for a good candidate, they usually go for a PhD one because they're highly skilled. Moreover, they know more and than a master's or a bachelor's student would any given day. And yeah, basically you have an advantage attached to your name. Plus, you get
yeah.
a doctorate. You get to use the word doctor right in front of you, which is actually quite cool. Deepak already knows about it. I hope I know learn about it someday. But yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just, I don't know if it depends on you as well. But like for me, it was just like a 1 day thing. After that, I've never used it. And the reason, because most of my friends or like the colleagues, they are already doctors and they never use it. So I don't portray myself as like I'm a doctor, Deepak Sharma. It's just like I call them by their name, they call me by my name. So it becomes
Of
kind of
course,
like
yeah.
very
Of course, your colleagues
normal.
would call you by that name, but when you're working in an industrial setup or when you're doing a seminar or a conference, they would refer to you as a doctor first,
I mean,
which is a big
yeah,
achievement, and you got to be proud of that, mate.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, those are the things
Uh,
you look forward to when once you're done with your PhD. Yeah.
all right. Thank you so much for your time. It was really lovely interacting with you and it was so
Yeah,
informative.
man. Yeah, same here. It's kind of fun because for the people that are watching, you got to understand that Deepak and me go long way back. I think it's been I think a decade, more than a decade. Yeah,
More than a decade, yeah,
I
2010.
think so. Yeah. We did our bachelors together, and of course, Deepak went his own way, and I found my way to PhD much more later in my life.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's just fun talking to the people that you know and
yeah,
learning more about each other, which is actually quite cool.
yeah.
So yeah, thank you,
Thanks,
mate, for
man.
inviting me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys, for watching the entire episode. Now, if you have any questions or if you want me to make a podcast or invite someone for any particular question, you can leave your questions in the comment sections. And also, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel so that you can get all the information. And also, please don't forget to press the bell icon.